I guess that means it's time to start. Good evening, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I know how busy the start of the school year is for everyone, and we are going to do our best to move this along, answer the questions that we most frequently get at this time of year. I'm Lauren Lieberman. I have met almost all of you, I think. I'm the Director of College Counseling here at Shady side. Super excited to be starting year 2 here. I will say when I did this a year ago, it felt a lot less certain, a lot more overwhelming. Last year was a great year, and it is really exciting to be back. So, quick overview of what we're going to do tonight. Yeah, what do you guys think of this new projector? It's pretty awesome, right? Okay. This is what we're looking to do tonight, is mainly reopen our communication. We've seen some of you recently, many of you we haven't seen since last spring, and just kind of set out what's to come. This college process gets talked about a lot. Some of you have had older children go through it. Some of you, this is your first time as a parent going through this process. Some of you have been through it many, many times before. And we're just gonna kind of lay out what your role is, how you can best support your kids, and what you can expect over these next few months. So let's just take a moment here to think about where we are and how we got here, right? So your kid is now a senior. And while you have all been parents for many more years than I have been, I had my own experience this fall that felt to me a little bit like what many of you might be feeling when my child, my oldest, my son Sydney, got ready to go to kindergarten. And I want to share a story with you because, I felt like, oh my gosh, this is just what it's going to feel like times 100 as my kids grow up and as perhaps some of you might be feeling. So Sydney is heading to kindergarten and they send home the supply list in the summer. And I get the list and I'm like, okay, great, I can handle this. It's okay, he needs all this stuff now, he's a big kid, we're gonna get this. So I go to Target on my own with my list. It's probably the first week of August. The stocks are, the shelves are stuffed. Everything in every color. I look at the list and I say, okay, I'm gonna get everything on this list except the pencil box. Because the pencil box, that has personality. I'm gonna let him pick the pencil box. But for something like a binder or a box of crayons, I'm gonna get these things because I'm here and it's easy and okay. So I pick up the supplies and I don't get the pencil box. And the weeks kind of fly by and we don't get back to Target and I've told him about the pencil box. So at this point I can't really pick it up for him because I've now kind of built up that he gets to pick this out. And we go to Target on the Sunday before kindergarten starts. On Monday's orientation, Tuesday's the first day. And I give myself this pep talk before we get in the car where I'm like, okay, Sydney, it's gonna be really busy there, but Mama's gonna be patient, okay? I'm gonna be so patient. We're gonna find you the best pencil box ever for kindergarten. He's like, okay. We get in the car, we approach Target. There's literally a traffic line out the door just to get into Target. No problem. I've got this. And we go into Target, and we go back to the school supply section, and there's pretty much no pencil boxes left. And I was like, oh my gosh, how did I let this happen? I've known about this for weeks. The only pencil boxes left are on this little end cap, this random assortment. There's probably 6 total. When I had been there weeks before, there were literally 30 different kinds of pencil boxes or more. So I show him the pencil boxes and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I knew we should have done this earlier. I knew we shouldn't have waited. Take a look. Let me know what you think. And he's like, okay, I'll pick that one. I'm like, are you sure you want that one? I know there's not very many left. Don't settle. City, don't settle on the pencil box. If you don't like that one, we can go online. Amazon Prime, it'll be here in 2 days. We'll get you the one you really want. Maybe we should go to a few more stores. And he looks at me like, what is your problem? And he's like, I like this one. And then I realized pretty quickly, I don't think this is really about the pencil box, right? Like, this is me feeling like this really weighty milestone is upon us. And I'm feeling some anxiety about this big transition, mainly because it's a big milestone that has been built up, and I'm feeling some anxiety about that. And then I thought, oh my gosh, this is how Bed Bath & Beyond has built their back-to-school empire. This is like millions of people with their pencil boxes like, no, we'll get you the right comforter for college, I promise. Pick out any comforter you want. So I think I felt in that moment like, okay, this is kind of what it's about. Getting ready for kindergarten, it's different than getting ready for senior year. But there are some things that has in common. There's a lot of buildup, a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation. Where are you going to send your kid to kindergarten? When are they starting? Did you go look at the schools? Very similar to some of the conversation that you might be engaging in at some point. Learning to separate my own issues from those of my child, right? Like one of the fundamental issues in parenting, and kind of keeping a watch on those things as they bubble up, right? I might have gone online to look at the pencil boxes that night, but he was fine, and I didn't order any others, even though he didn't recognize the character on the one he picked, because it didn't matter, and he was happy with that. I have to put a lot of trust in other people that I don't even know. I don't walk him in anymore, I don't unpack his backpack anymore. He's responsible for his folder every day, his snack. I'm like, how's he gonna know where the snack is? How's he gonna know what it is? Who am I gonna ask if he got it? You know what, it's not my place anymore. He's gonna figure those things out, and I'm gonna trust the people that some of them I know, a lot of them I don't know. If there's a problem with those things, I'm gonna learn about it and hear about it. And finally, that there are people there I can reach out to when I feel really uneasy. And I hope if you leave with nothing else tonight, you get a really strong sense of the support team that is around your sons and daughters through this process. Because I think we've assembled a pretty solid team here. People who you can trust, people who are gonna reach out to you in those moments of my kid is lost and can't find their snack and didn't put the backpack in the right place, and that hopefully you can feel like, wow, they do have a team around them at Shady Side. And I don't have to be super nervous, though it is my job as a parent to worry that they're not gonna get done the things they need to get done. So this is what we're gonna set out to do tonight, some quick introductions, and then really go through like what is to come, how do you best support, some of the nuts and bolts, like how does this actually work? Because it's changed quite a bit since many of us went to college. A little context on statistics, goals for the year, and I've dropped in some pictures. The pictures that I've dropped in this slide, and you'll see a couple more of them throughout the presentation. This is a big celebration that we had at the end of the year last year with the seniors, the first week of May, when they had all made their college decisions. So it seems kind of far off right now, but it does come pretty quickly, and these are reminders to you all that, wow, like everybody gets there, and by that first week of May, everyone is pretty excited about where they're headed. So I am joined by, I think, the best team in all the land of college counseling. Julie Hertz, Lucas Frankel. Louise Ford is not here this evening, but she is a critical member of our team. She pretty much knows everything that's going on at all times. If you haven't had an opportunity to meet her, she sits at the front of our office. She has the most killer sense of humor ever, and really looks after all of us. So if you ever need anything, she's an additional awesome resource. I also at this time want to introduce Nathan Hogan. We're going to talk a little bit more specifically about Nathan's role with us, but Nathan is a member of our English department who's partnered with us this fall to help in the essay support. So everything that we do here at Shadyside, you've seen this many times at this point, whether you've been here for 2 years or 14 years or somewhere in between, is pretty much fundamentally linked to our mission and our guiding principles. And these guiding principles are what we use to drive our process and how we counsel kids. And this is kind of where we're working from right now. Where should my child be? The fundamental question that most parents have, are they behind? Should they be doing something that they're not supposed to be doing? Who and how are people going to help them? And what is my role as a parent through these next few months? We had the boot camps, and we pretty much saw every single member of the senior class in those boot camps. So we wanted to take a minute to just share with you a little bit about what we did in there. And the main goal for those was to make sure that they had their Common App up and running. The Common App is that application that's going to go to the bulk of the schools out there. It's something like 700 applications, 700 schools that take the Common App. And there's a linking that happens between the Common App and Naviance. And that's how we send all the documents electronically, is through that link. That's mainly what we worked on in those boot camps, and getting it so that they have the right permissions to upload teacher recs. Very mechanical, but very important. We've also seen the bulk of your kids in meetings, one-on-one. If it's not this week, I would say probably by the end of next week we will have seen everyone. And these are some of the things that we've talked about with your kids. A quick refresher of the application plans. We had a very similar slide last year, but last year it felt really far away. And now it's here. So I just wanted to do kind of a quick recap of some of these terms and what this all means, right? So you have the non-restrictive plans and the restrictive plans. We've already had a number of questions from parents like, can my kid do ED plus EA? Can they do 2 EAs, 5 EAs? Can they do EA and REA? Like, how does this mix come together? All of these slides will be posted after the presentation. If you want to come back to this, you don't have to take pictures of any of the slides or notes, but this is sort of the overview of what these admission programs and deadlines are. There are some schools that make things very tricky because you think they're going to follow one rule, but they may follow another. Like Georgetown's, any exception there is, Georgetown is usually it. So know that if your child is hot on Georgetown, they probably don't go with the way other things do it, other schools do it, but that's okay. Love Georgetown. And there are some other schools that have a non-binding early program that still restrict where else you go in the early round. And I think at this point, I'm going to stop here. I'm going to turn it over to Lucas. And there will be time at the end for questions. Our goal is to wrap up with about like somewhere around 8 o'clock, give or take 5-10 minutes.
Hello everyone, hope everyone's doing well. So unfortunately I don't have any hilarious child anecdotes, so it might be a lot less entertaining, I apologize. But I'm going to try and get through a lot of sort of the high level stuff. So for starters, as you can see here, it takes a village, right? It's going to take a village to walk the student through the college application process. But the student really is the driver. We want the student to be the center point for everything. Obviously we have you guys, the parents, helping out. We have the teachers, we have the counselors, and we're all part of Shadyside. So we do want to, if there's nothing else you take away from this, that the student really is the person who is going to be making the decisions and driving home all the deadlines and dates that they need to take care of. A little cartoon. This is my attempt at humor. Lauren's anecdotes. So apologies in advance. I'm going to be jumping around a bit. I'm not going to go bullet by bullet. I'm sure you all can read through, but I do want to give just some high-level information. So again, the students are really the drivers of this, and we want them to feel supported throughout. So if they are not communicating with us, with you, we should all be communicating with each other. So if you are feeling short on information, maybe I have a puzzle piece that you don't have yet, or vice versa. Maybe I'm confused about something that I can come to you, and we should all feel like the student is the center of that. We do want to make sure that everyone is being private about this. Some students are, very open about their college process and want to say, oh, I'm applying to these 10 schools and I already got into 8 of them. Some people don't want to say what even schools they're applying to, and we want to be able to respect that. In terms of integrity, we want students to never have any questions about what they're about to put into their application. It should be pretty honest and straightforward. So a good story that I've heard recently from Julie and Lauren is, if a student thinks to themselves, well, how would this school know if? If you're beginning a thought or an idea with that, the answer is no. Stop. Stop what you're doing and come back to reality, okay? Again, I've been encouraging students to make deadlines. Thankfully, the Common App, if you add the school to the Common App My Colleges list, you already have a list of deadlines there. So you don't necessarily need to make a spreadsheet with every deadline. You have them somewhere. But if an Excel spreadsheet is something that you feel comfortable with, you can go through and do that. And we encourage students to be really on top of all the deadlines. We also want students to speak to their teachers. They're going to be writing letters of recommendation, encouraging students. They are also amazing resources, so we want them to be communicating with teachers as well. And we want students to be accountable for their actions. For the parents, for you guys, like Lauren said, we want the students to feel independent. We want them to make their decision. We want them to pick their pencil box, right? If we can help them pick the pencil box, all the better. But in the end, it's their decision, and we just want to offer as much support as possible. You guys are also have infinitely more life experience than they do. If they have a question about college or life or careers, you guys should be there to guide them. We will be there as well, obviously, for anything that a student doesn't come and ask their parents directly. But again, we want you to jump in. Again, if there's anything that you guys have that is unclear that we have not informed you about, we want you to feel comfortable to come and ask us. I know that I've gotten a lot of questions so far, and they've all been great questions that I think are appropriate and something that I can, again, like I said before, fit in the puzzle pieces. The teachers. So when they're writing the recommendations, do not feel that this is an evaluation of your students' abilities. Again, I have never seen a recommendation that has been a scathing evaluation of the student. It's just been a recommendation. And so you should feel confident that the student picked the appropriate teachers. They're also going to be giving just sort of an overview of what the student's academic abilities are. They'll, of course, give anecdotes, how the student interacts with other students, the personality, and they will be giving these to us by October 15th. So if you know that a teacher has not yet submitted it, it's okay. They do have an October 15th deadline. If you feel that your student is an outlier, as in they have some wildly early deadline for a special case, we probably know about it already, but please do let us know if you feel that it hasn't been communicated yet. In the college counseling office. So we are there, I think the top bullet says it all. We are there to maximize the students' chances for success. We want the students to be successful. So if they come to us and we think that their school list is totally different from what they're saying to us is what they want and what they're looking for, we want to make sure that they are successful in the place that they're going to study for the next 4 years. We want to make sure they are on top of their senior year work and that they are not shirking any responsibilities just based on the college counseling process. But at the same time, we want to make sure that they're balancing all of the college counseling duties that they have, or excuse me, college process duties that they have on top of their schoolwork and athletics. We want to, know all of the deadlines. So if a student comes to us the day before something is due and says, oh, I need my counselor recommendation by tomorrow, or I need my transcript by tomorrow, we do appreciate communication in a timely way. We will get to this later, but the transcript request form has a very specific 10 school day prior policy right at the top. So again, we want to make sure that we're giving about 2 weeks leeway if a student is going to apply to a school to give us that information. I think that is it for my section. Again, that is just sort of a high-level overview of what to expect and how we're going to support the students through. And now I'm going to turn it over to Julie, who is going to give you a little bit more of the minutia.
Oh, minutia, it sounds so exciting. You guys are all really jazzed. And for those of you who have seen me present before, I always seem to be the one who gets like the nuts and bolts stuff and the slide about financial aid and all the ones that people are really excited to hear more about. So I apologize in advance. But I am going to be talking today about sort of the procedures and again, what to expect in this process as far as the support and the tools that are in place and how we are going to work with your kids to actually get these applications sent to the colleges and ensure that that process moves smoothly. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Julie Hertz. I'm actually starting my 10th year here at Shady Side, which is amazing and terrifying and wonderful, and it's great that I've seen so many of your kids and some of your older kids go through this process and that they're now turning into adults, which is also just scary. But I'm really happy to be here and glad that you guys are with us. Again, thinking about the process sort of in that idea of the people through the process, the technology, and the tools that are in place to help us. In terms of the people that are going to be working with you through the process, certainly much of this is still a very human process, and that's exactly how we want it to be. As Lauren said, your children have been coming in to meet with us. A lot of this is going to happen, a lot of this process is going to happen with your kids through one-on-one meetings. So again, we're going to sit down with the kids, we're going to look over their applications with them, we're going to be really answering a lot of things just in those individual meetings. In terms of counselor communications, and one thing that I will say, I think that there's sort of different levels of communication that your kids are going to see from their counselors. The most basic level might not even really be from us. They might be automated messages that sort of come out from their counselor, but not really us. Then there's going to be those emails that we just send to the student and we say, hey, come on in, we want to talk about something. Then there's the next level, which is where you're copied on the email. And then like the really escalated level is when you're copied and the advisor is copied, so you can sort of see how nervous we are about things. So if you start to see emails with your child that you're copied on and the advisor is copied on, you probably want to sort of help bring your child to us. Kicking and screaming, maybe dragged by the ear. In terms of the things that we do in those meetings with the kids, again, Lauren and Lucas have sort of already talked a little bit about that, but we are sitting down with the kids. We are very deliberately talking about essays, which I'll hit on a little bit more in a few minutes. We're talking about the actual application process. Right now we're talking a lot about how student summers were, and we're talking about lists and sort of what their plans are moving forward through the next couple of months. Certainly planning visits and the reps that are coming through. In terms of the essay work, your students have all been informed of this, and we want to make it really clear, we're excited about this sort of a new approach to the essay process for this year. As Lauren mentioned, Nathan Hogan is going to be sort of an auxiliary member of our team for the fall, helping us with the essay review process. The kids did all receive this by email, and like Lauren said, this will be available to you. The slides will all be available as well, but something new that we're trying this year is, again, a sort of multifaceted approach to the essays. With regard to counselor review of essays, we're doing a cyclical review process where the students submit their essays to us by a Sunday evening, and they are guaranteed that we will get their essay back to them by that Friday afternoon, if not sooner. So it just sort of helps us to make sure that the kids understand that the deadlines and sort of how to hopefully structure their work and space their work out so that they can see that they've got 16 different review cycles when they can have their essays reviewed by us, and they can submit their essays, as many essays as they want. They can send us, on a Sunday evening, they can send us 15 essays, and by Friday we will get them back to that student. They can also spread them out. They can send us as many different types of drafts, whatever stage. We are also excited to have some expanded essay workshops after school. So for example, Mr. Hogan had an essay workshop just this afternoon working with students on their common application essay and really getting that going. So we have another one of those tomorrow as well as 2 next week. Throughout the fall, throughout mainly September and October, we're also going to be addressing sort of more specific essay topics. So the supplemental questions that the colleges often ask, things like that. Mr. Hogan is also going to have drop-in hours. So again, if a student wants to just stop in during one of those open hours, during the day or after school, which again, the kids all know about, they can come in and they can get that on-the-spot review of an essay. So it's something that we're excited to try this year, and it sort of speaks to requests that we've gotten in the past, and we hopefully are going to see how it goes for this year, and if necessary, do this again next year or reevaluate. So we're excited about that. The other thing that's happening today, it actually started for the first time, is our college reps coming through for the fall. So our very first college rep visit took place today. This list is overwhelming, and you're not expected to be able to read through all the colleges right now, but what we want you to know is that there are already 109 colleges visiting SSA as of yesterday. I know that today we actually already had a couple more signed up that aren't on this list. So what we want you to know is that if a college is traveling through the fall and they're recruiting students, if they're coming to Pittsburgh, you can pretty much assume that they are going to be visiting Shadyside, and that's something that we are really proud of, to know that we are definitely a destination for those college admissions professionals who are out, again, traveling and recruiting prospective students. The process for this, in terms of the kids sign up for the visits, they are notified of the visits through the Naviance Family Connection program. They can check a list in our office at any time. They sign up for those visits, and I'll hit on that a little bit more in a few minutes. But again, we probably will be around, I would say, at least 130 by the end of the season. So truly, as many colleges will probably visit us as we have members of the senior class, which is pretty neat in our opinion. Okay. Again, in terms of, so we've got sort of the human support and tools, in terms of the technology behind this process. Again, this is an entirely electronic process at this point. The students are all logged into their Naviance Family Connection account. As we said during those boot camps, we worked with the kids to link their Naviance accounts with their Common Application accounts. That's how they are managing their lists. That's also how they are signing up for those visits for those 109 college reps that are coming through our area. And this is also a place where the kids can actually check and see their application status. So they will be able to see the list of colleges that they've informed us that they are applying to. They will be able to see when things have been submitted by our office. So it's a really nice holding place for a lot of helpful information. And again, many of you remember Family Connection in the spring. We were talking more about the research end of it. We were talking about learning about the colleges and sort of doing that homework. And now it becomes more of a support in the sense of college applications and managing sort of what has been sent, what hasn't been sent, and again, a very helpful tool. The Common Application, I imagine that, again, all of your children have an account. We did ensure that that happened at the boot camp, so you may have looked over their shoulder while they've been working on it. As Lauren said, over 700 colleges use the Common Application, so essentially every student is going to file at least one Common Application in our experience. Now, other schools may not be on the Common Applications. Some of the notable ones that our kids are applying to are places like Pitt and Penn State that don't use the Common Application, but the school-specific platforms are going to be used in those cases, and all of that still dovetails really smoothly with the Naviance system in terms of submitting materials. The one thing that I will say, and I say this to the kids, if anything does get forgotten or does sort of slip through the cracks at times, and so I would just encourage you all to make a note of this as well, and we do the same, and that's submitting of the test scores for the colleges. And that's something that that does actually have to go through the testing agencies, so either the College Board website or the ACT website to actually submit those scores officially. There is a self-reporting element to the Common Application and to most applications, but they still need to be received officially. And the College Board will charge you for that, surprise, surprise, as will the ACT. So again, I apologize in advance. Oh, I did get a cartoon. I thought I didn't get anything fun, any cartoons. Yes, go back to kindergarten and start over. And as also the mother of a 3.5-year-old, I should really be taking this to heart and be running home and sort of like opening up my 529 thing. Okay, and speaking of money, so the financial aid process, it has moved up a little bit in the past couple of years. So again, if any of you have children who are maybe 4 years older, you might have done the financial aid process much later. So if you were applying for financial aid at that time, it would have been more in the winter of the senior year. things have changed as far as that timeline goes, and so now documents like the FAFSA, documents like the CSS profile, you're going to see those actually opening up in October of your children's senior year, not January, as was previously the case. What that means is that sort of tax information is used a little bit differently, older tax information is used. The good news about that is that financial aid offices on the college side can get you packages much more quickly and much earlier in the process. In terms of the forms that the colleges may specifically have, I would just encourage you to be looking on the college websites and making sure that you do know what each college requires. At a minimum, if you are applying for financial aid, you can expect to fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Many of the private colleges and universities will also use the CSS profile. That is the College Board profile. And again, some will have additional forms of their own that they ask for you to do. Something to also make a note of, the net price calculator is something that is required by law to be on every college's financial aid website. So if you are looking to see what sort of a tentative financial aid package might look like for your family, the net price calculator is something that you can go and you can access at any time on any of these websites. You will see that they vary by school, so some of them may be very simplistic. They might just have a couple of questions. Some of them might ask quite a bit more of you. General rule of thumb is that the more questions they ask, probably the more accurate that financial aid package is going to be. So, or that financial aid estimate, I should say. And again, this is just a really, really brief overview of financial aid. Please know that we are happy to help your kids with this. We are happy to talk with you on this. And as we've always said, we hope that you will realize that there are people who are extremely helpful on the college side as far as financial aid officers at these colleges and universities go, because they understand that this is very overwhelming, and sort of the paperwork and the numbers and just the sheer cost of attendance at many of these colleges. Along those lines, what I will say is that sort of first bullet point I do think is really important. And I encourage you all, if you haven't already done so with your children, to have a very realistic conversation with them and say, you know, what can we afford as a family, and what is this actually going to look like? Because there is nothing more heartbreaking than having a student who gets into their dream school and then realizes that it's not going to work out financially and they have to sort of make another decision. And trust me, those students are all wonderful and successful and happy, but it just is, no one really wants to see that happen whenever the admission letter comes, but the financial aid letter doesn't, or it really doesn't match and doesn't jive with what you were hoping for as a family. So I think that the earlier that you can have those conversations, the better. Boy, that's a downer. Okay. In terms of procedure, in terms of the forms that your kids might be talking about, some things that might need your signatures on them, we will go through this. I'll actually show you the transcript release form in just a moment. In terms of missing school for college visits, again, as parents of seniors, you are, I'm sure, all very well versed in the dean's office process as far as the green cards that you fill out if you're going to have your child's going to be asking for a vacation or a doctor's appointment. The cards for college visits are orange. They need to have a parent signature on them. The seniors, again, for those of you who have children who went through this process previously, you may have remembered that there was a designated college visit weekend on the calendar in the past. We've done away with that because the reality was that we know you guys are visiting colleges when you can, and colleges are hosting programs that don't always line up with when our college visit weekend took place. And so we have encouraged the seniors, and we would encourage you to all be very thoughtful about missing school for college visits, but also recognizing that if there's a college that's hosting a program and your child is considering, let's say, an early decision application there, it's really wise to get onto that campus if possible and make a deliberate visit and help the thoughtful process. Again, I mentioned Naviance and the representatives that are coming through. The kids are signing up in that sense. I think actually when Lauren says that we've seen all the seniors, I think that we saw most of them on the first day or maybe the second day, because it seemed like they were all getting course changes done. So we signed an awful lot of course changes, but that is something that we do talk with all the kids about if they are changing a course for the senior year. And certainly the ongoing communication, as I've said, you're going to be getting emails from us, your kids are getting emails from us. They're going to see a lot of us this fall, and hopefully that's a good thing on all sides. In terms of the transcript request form, this is sort of a front and back look at what this document actually looks like. The version that you will see is actually blue. If you happen to print it out at home, we would really love it if it was on blue paper, because it will make it so much easier for us to sort of keep track of it. But what you'll see circled in red on this form, what's really important is that there is a line here for a parent's signature. Now, we do understand that our boarding students and students whose families are not here locally with us may not have this sign, and we'll deal with those on a case-by-case basis, but this form is something that we want to make sure that you are seeing and you are signing off on before it comes to our office. This form is how students will formally take their list of colleges I'm applying to, meaning, the colleges I'm thinking about, to colleges I'm applying to. So if you are on Naviance, if you're looking at their list, or if they are on that page and they say, well, here's the list of 25 schools that Ms. Hertz and I talked about back in April, you know, I'm not really worried about all these 25 schools. These are the 7 that I want to apply to, but I can't move them around. This form is going to do that. And so as Lucas said, we've asked the kids for at least a 10-day turnaround, 10 school day turnaround on this form, so that we can make sure that all of their materials are ready to go, everything's ready to be submitted. But we've also put a few helpful dates on there that, you know, for those November 1st deadlines, you want to have this form by October 11th, October 18th or December 11th for those regular decision deadlines. This form, you'll see that there's only 5 lines on that. We realize that most of your students will probably apply to more than 5 schools, so we're ready to get multiple copies of this form. A lot of the kids may be turning in one for sort of their early round and one from their regular round. And so again, this is how they're going to actively, how we're going to actively process their applications and move them into the system on Naviance and prepare to send their materials. I'll hand it back over to Lauren to sort of wrap things up and give some historical perspective on things.
I failed to introduce probably the most critical member of all of our support teams, and that is Sophie Lau, who is nice to be here with us this evening, because if you're out and about on this campus, you know that every evening she is there with a different support team. So thank you to Sophie, and you should all know that she is totally in this with us and with your kids as they go through this process. So thanks for being here, Sophie. Okay. Just kind of in context, like what does this all, how do these numbers unfold? This is a little bit of historical data. The average number of applications is somewhere around 7. The reason that I say around is because if you include those students who applied early decision, well then that's all 1s, and then it drives the average down. But most students are in the 6 to 9 ballpark. Some of them are higher than that, some of them are lower than that. About 3 or 4 admits, roughly. And then on the early front, so it's a little bit more than half the class who has typically applied in some sort of binding early program, and it's about half of those students who typically get in. So this part of it always comes up because students are like, oh yeah, I really want to apply early because I just want my process to be over. And that's the case for some of them, but not all of them get in early. So the driver for early shouldn't just be, I want my process to be over earlier. It is the bulk of the class, about 90%, that has their first application in by December 1st. So that's going to include everyone who applies to the Pitt, the Penn State, the big rolling schools that have earlier deadlines. Most students submit the first app by December 1st, and the first app is the hardest. So this is what you need to know, is after your student submits the first app, it only gets better. So if you find yourselves, and I was with a colleague today who said, her daughter is a sophomore in college, and she said, I had never seen my daughter more stressed than those fall weeks of the application process. For some of you, you won't see that because that's not how your kids process stress, but if you feel that, it gets better. I promise. After the first app is done, it gets better. After they're all done, it gets way better. And just kind of an overview, last year's class, about 902 applications. That's why we asked for the 10 days lead time. 226 different schools, they're attending schools really all over the U.S. And I think at this point, you know, when you hear your student, if you hear your son or daughter saying things like, everyone does this or everyone does that, there's nothing that everyone's doing. They're doing all different things for all different reasons, and I think, we like to think we're really helping students find a good fit with what they're thinking about. There's no one common path. Yes, they tend to be more on the eastern side of the country, but all different kinds of schools, all different programs. And as you go visit, remember, there are Shadyside students and alumni pretty much everywhere, and they're eager to hear from other Shadyside students, other Shadyside families. Okay, so now we've said, if you take one thing from this presentation, we've said it many, many times, but I just, want to reiterate here that the senior year is really about more than applying to college. And those students who have the best senior year can really put that in context. I just went to a wedding this past weekend, and there were 14 of my own classmates from Shadyside there, which was really fun. And you know what, you all know this, right? You don't remember the details of the college process. What you remember is the times you had with your friends. We slid right back into high school mode, hopefully all of you have had the opportunity to do some sort of reunion. But those things we did in senior year, that's what we remember and talked about and could have talked about for a really long time. Your students have a lot of independence and choice in the senior year. I mean, I had lots of students already tell me, my classes this year are awesome. I love them. I can't wait to go. I got to pick the things I want to take. Some of them are doing independent studies. Some of them will propose senior projects. They're doing a lot of things this year they're leading sports teams. They're breaking records. They're mentoring underclassmen, as scary as that might seem to you. Those underclassmen are watching every single thing they do. Some of you have younger kids, and you know this. I thought it was really cute to hear a story from a senior who told me that her younger sibling is a freshman this year and tried on 12 different t-shirts before the first day of school. What do you think about this one? What do you think about this one? And the older sister's like, it looks exactly the same as the one you just had on. That's the role that your kids are playing for someone, probably right now. The skills that they're learning right now, this is, I think the things that they're doing right now are gonna help them. So for all sorts of things, whether they're preparing for an interview, whether they're getting themselves organized, whether they're preparing to introduce themselves to a stranger, whether they're working through a tricky situation with a teacher or a friend. These are the things that they're gonna go off and do. So I think added to the parent role is sort of the added context that, gosh, don't let senior year be all about college, college, college. You know this, your kids are sick of talking about it already. They were sick of it probably a year ago. So as you go off to family functions, as you're out and about, give those relatives a heads up, cool it on the college talk this fall, or talk to them about something other than where they're applying and where they want to go. And I think that's a really nice role that parents can play. So again, I'll leave you with this image. This will be your kids in a few short months, all wearing their college sweatshirts. If you're not following us on Facebook, we have a really active Facebook page. We're also new to Instagram, and this is where I rely on my younger colleagues to help me with Instagram, because I feel like I don't have room in my life for more social media, but we're getting there. And we post a lot of articles and just kind of a lot of good food for thought on our Facebook. So that's what we've got for tonight. And there were a lot of things that we went through pretty fast. We certainly didn't hit on all the questions that could be out there. So let's hear some of your questions. Yes?
I'll go first.
Great.
Every school we visited seems to show a statistical advantage to early decision applicants. If your kid isn't decisive, do you see that as posing a problem for students falling into a regular decision route?
Yeah, can everybody hear the question or not? The question is about ED, and everybody shows the statistical advantage of early decision. If you don't have a kid who's leaning strongly in one direction, are they at a huge disadvantage if they're only applying in regular decision pools? So I think this is where we kind of are trying to help them meld their heart with strategy. And it can't be all one, and it can't be all the other. And so those schools that show their statistical advantage are probably not even showing you the actual statistic advantages, because if they did, they would look like they were decreasing access and doing something bad. Because those schools that have early decision, or some of them, there are schools that are taking upwards of 55% of their applicants in their ED round. In their ED rounds, they might be getting 20% of their applications, but it means they're filling 55% of the class with 20% of the applicants, leaving the other portion for the other 80% of the applicants. So it's a tough one. I think, though, there's no reason to push your kid into something that really doesn't feel good to them. And so we see it as our jobs to help you and your kids make really well-informed decisions. And if your kid isn't in a place to apply early decision, they can say, you know what, I get it. I understand the advantage, but I think I'll be happier seeing all my options, because you might have a kid who says, I like every school on my list. I really do. They might not like them all equally, but if your kid says, I like every school on my list, I can see myself at every one of them, that's what we're hoping for. I think every kid is going to be different, and it's sort of how you marry where their heart is with what the strategy is. So kids, I mean, some kids you say that to, and they're like, I just want to get it. What are my odds? I'll put my, well, how can I maximize my chances of getting into one of these two places? That might be early decision. Some kids, your kid, not that way. And much more, not all in on any one school right now. And I think it's sad when you see kids with a lot of regret if they do get in for all those months. So I think it really depends, but I will say regular decision at schools that have early decision is significantly more selective.
Follow up on that, Lauren, but someone told me that ED pool are much more of a, higher, that pool of kids who are applying ED. Isn't that a more difficult pool to compare? You know what I mean? Have they looked at that statistic?
Yeah, I mean, it probably is that there are stronger applicants in that early pool.
Right.
Yes. I still do feel like there is some advantage to being in the early pool. Worst case scenario in most cases, now, there are some kids who get, in early rounds, you might hear 3 different options. You might hear you're in, that's the obvious good option. You might hear you're not in, done, that's the obvious bad option. Or you might hear a deferral. Some schools don't deny at all in the early round. They defer everyone. Some schools deny some, but defer most. It is still our belief that if you are deferred and looked at again in regular, you're better off than if you would have been in just regular decision. And that's because then you have more reads on that application, and every school wants to be loved. Nobody wants to be the backup boyfriend here, right? So I think that there is still the advantage. The pool might be stronger, and you hear, yes, and that's where recruited athletes might come in, or all these different things, they're all in the early pool. It's true, but I think it still is an advantage. Maybe not the difference, like, let's say the difference in the admit rate is 20%. It doesn't mean your kid has a 20% better chance of getting in early, but I do think there still is advantage. Yeah.
If you apply early decision or early action, is deferring a year for a gap year an option, or is it off the table?
Yeah. You want to do this one? Sure. Hello? No.
think we are going to keep using the mic just because we are filming this for any families, again, of boarding students who can't be here, so I'll stand and make sure I can be heard. In terms of gap years, in terms of deferring your own enrollment, that is definitely still on the table for students who apply early. I can think of only a very small handful of colleges that sort of don't have deferral as a possibility, but we certainly see students every year who do defer their admission for a year, and sometimes those are students who are, so again, this is a student who would go through the admission process as a senior at Shadyside. They are admitted to a college or multiple colleges. They send their deposit into the college of their choice, whether it's early or on May 1st. And then they contact that college, they write to that college and they say, I would like to take a year off. I would like to travel, I would like to do service, I would like to play hockey. We have students who do gap years for any number of reasons, and there's no, in my experience, doing early has no bearing on that.
How, for the transcript request, do you have to have already put in your applications before that comes in? And then the second thing is for the SAT and ACT, how far ahead do you have to request that be sent to the school? So if you have a deadline of November 1st, you have to do it by a certain time.
So I'll just, since I'm standing here, I will say, good question. That was in terms of the transcript release form and the timing of that. The students do not have to have submitted their own applications when they do that transcript request form. That form is them telling us their intention to apply, and one of the fields on that form is the application deadline, and there's also space for notes there. So if a student is completing, let's say, a rolling decision application, there's not a set deadline by that college, we will ask the student to sort of put their plans down at the bottom. So if the student is applying to the University of Pittsburgh, they fill out the form. On the bottom, maybe they're planning their application, they want to hit submit on September 30th. And so we will work with them to meet that deadline so that our materials are also ready at that deadline. So the students do not need to submit their applications before doing that form.
The second part was about the test scores. How long does it take? It typically takes 2 to 3 weeks for test scores to get there from the testing agency. So a lot of kids and parents have questions about, like, how does it all get matched up? Like, does everything have to come at the same time? What if I take a November test, but I've already applied because the deadline was November 1st? You can submit more materials for your application even after the deadline. And so let's say you've applied in an early round within November 1st, and your soccer team wins the state championship and you scored the winning goal of the game or something. You're like, I need colleges to know this. You can always email or get to them an update with either new test scores, new information, something, and your kids can run this by us. You don't need to update them about everything, but the big things can come in after the applications have been submitted.
Yeah.
Do you have a view on personal recommendations outside of the school?
We've got a view on everything.
Personal recommendations.
Yeah, the question's about personal recommendations or additional recommendations outside of the 2 teacher recs and the counselor rec.
Sure. Personally, I don't know if Julie or Lauren agree with me, but I think it depends. I think if this is a soccer coach that you've been with for 10 years, I think that's a great personal recommendation. I think if this is an SAT tutor that you've been paying $100 an hour for the past 6 months, that may not be a person that you want to have a personal recommendation from. So I think you obviously want to be a little thoughtful about who you're asking. Also, if this is a person, an alum of the school, where do they all fall into sort of the scope of the application?
Sometimes, a lot of schools will say, do not have more than 1 or 2 at the most additional recommendations. I know when I used to read applications, we would just, the homeschool applicants would come in and there'd be the rec from mom and the rec from dad and the rec from aunt. That kind of personal recommendation, no. But some kids have like a boss from a job or somebody who's really seen them in a different light. And that's really what the colleges want. If you're gonna have additional materials in there, it needs to be somebody who has really seen a different side. If your student has done research outside of school or done something really substantial that is outside of how anyone in the school might see them, but you know, it can get repetitive if it's purely a personal, like this is a really good kid. You know, that's probably things that they're gonna hear from the school. The other question we get a lot is, well, what if you know someone at the school who could be influential or someone famous? I remember we were really excited at the University of Chicago when we got a handwritten letter from Susan Sontag because we had all read her writing. You know, there are politicians who write, there are all sorts of people, and it really depends on how well that person knows your kid and how connected to the school they are. So that's sort of the other kind of recommendation that we get questions about a lot. And I would say let's kind of hash that out individually to make a call on that.
Yes. When the colleges send people to the school and the kids can go visit, do they send admissions people or just random people? So that could be like an interview for the kids. They'll might put a face to the application when they come.
Yes,
Yes.
yes, absolutely. It is an admissions representative. They're not sending like faculty members or anything like that yet.
They're often the people who read the kids' applications too. And a lot of the sessions are small. So we've told the kids, like, do some research before you show up there because you might be one of 2 people or one of 3 people. Now, the reps are seeing typically, you know, when we used to do this back then, like 4 or 5 schools a day. I used to do 4 or 5 schools a day, 3 consecutive weeks. There are reps that are out there 4 or 5 schools a day, 10 weeks. Like the chance that they're gonna remember every face 4 or 5 schools a day over 10 weeks, probably not everyone. But certainly I know, and we see this often, is they leave the Shady Side visit and they might like make a couple notes. Like this is the kid who asked me all those questions about science research. Maybe I can get them some more information about that.
It also is a chance for the kids to make a personal connection, and the reps are sharing their email addresses. So if your child is at one of these visits and they end up applying to a particular college, it may be a nice way for them to follow up after the fact and ask a question about their application or about what to expect and to sort of continue a relationship. And again, that's not true at every school, but definitely at those that do a more holistic review where they are really trying to get to know the kids in the process. And as we said, it's definitely the admissions representatives are the ones who are reading the files, visiting Shady Side. And just as a note, the students do also understand about the visits that if they have a test in that class, they are not allowed to miss a test or other major assessment. And it does also get to a point in the year, sometimes later into October, when the kids are just feeling like, you know what, I've missed this class a couple of times already, I have a test tomorrow, I really need to be present in class. The reps have tremendous respect for that because they are recruiting students and they want kids who want to go to class. And so we've already started to have conversations with some of the kids who are saying, well, you know, I really think that I need to be in this class. And it's perfectly acceptable for the students to maybe let their teacher know. They should always let their teacher know in advance, certainly, but they should maybe let their teacher know, I'm gonna be 5 minutes late, and they can pop into our office, they can say hello to the rep, introduce themselves, maybe sign in, and then get back to physics if there's going to be a review for the test tomorrow, or whatever the case may be.
Have you seen any positive results from where the school is a reach, where the student applies early decision?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, that's that's how a lot of students do use early decision, is if they say, I want to give myself the best possible chance for those schools, and it's often those schools that are the reaches on their list, and they know that their chances are worse in the regular decision pool. But, you know, most kids have like, the reach range is broad, right? So you have to be strategic about which reach you're going to go for in early, because you may only have one early chance. I say may because some schools have 2 rounds of early decision, but many more have 1 round of early decision. So, you know, I think that's where our conversations are now, is if I love these 5 schools and I look at the graph and I'm like, wow, No one in the history of Shadyside Academy has ever gotten in with, my numbers. And in fact, they're pretty far away from my numbers. Is that my best bet for my REACH ED, or is there a different REACH school that maybe is closer within REACH, or maybe they're all the same? It depends on the kid, and it depends on how their list is coming together. But yes, ED definitely gives, think of it like a ladder. It gives a rung or two up on the ladder. It doesn't take a kid from not being competitive to being admissible. I mean, it's not the bottom of the ladder to the top. It's like a couple rungs, and depending on the school, it could be a couple rungs or it could be one rung.
If you can only get to 5 of the 7 schools to visit, for whatever reason, there's an athletic conflict or something, what advice do you have to make those meaningful? And you definitely want to, if they visit campus, go see them, but if that doesn't happen either, so there's 2 schools that you couldn't either see on campus or you couldn't make a visit, are there some things that, or there's a late arrival, maybe suddenly the student really wants to apply to this school. So, any advice there?
Yeah, I mean, so first, I think it depends on the school. How much do they factor in demonstrated interest? If the student wasn't able to get to Ohio State, Ohio State may say, well, we have how many other tens of thousands of applicants. It's okay that you weren't able to make it. That's not a huge factor in our decision. Where if you're looking at a school that's a little smaller, they're right around the corner, maybe they're only an hour away, they may say, well, how did you not find the hour to get here? Now, if a school is in California, they may say...
Will they really do that?
Absolutely.
They'll say you couldn't come an hour.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
absolutely.
Case Western, we love Case Western. It's 2 hours from here.
if you don't get to Cleveland,
If you don't get to Cleveland for Case Western and your kid likes Case Western, they're going to be at a disadvantage. And they're clear about it. They're pretty darn clear about that. So some of the schools, yeah.
So also just to follow up, yes, it's helpful, but again, I think that it's important to prioritize. If the 2 schools that you weren't able to get to were the 2 schools that you're really not the most interested in, but you hit the top 5 schools, that's a successful round. I would also say that following up via email, a phone call, anything like that, just to get some FaceTime to become front of mind is always a great idea. If the school's in California and you aren't able to fly out there and it's your first choice school, you may start hounding the admissions rep saying, listen, I'm really excited about this school. There's just no way for me to get out there. I'm so sorry. Is there a time we can set up a phone call, a Skype meeting, anything? Developing a rapport any way you can.
I told somebody today, and I don't remember who it was, to sort of prioritize the decision points. So if you're deciding whether or not to apply ED, that's a school you probably want to go visit. If you're deciding whether or not that school should be on the list or not, but if it doesn't have a decision point attached to it, like I know I'm definitely going to apply and I know it's not going to be my early school, there's no reason to prioritize that one because there's no decision point there. Let's do maybe one more question.
So with colleges, universities come to Pittsburgh and they have an info session downtown somewhere, or there's a rep coming here to Shadyside, are those weighted in a similar way as driving to Cleveland or wherever to visit?
Great question.
Yeah, so a lot of the colleges will come through Pittsburgh and do a session. We are lucky enough to be hosting several of these sessions in this very auditorium this fall. And yeah, the demonstrated interest points, if you can't get to Johns Hopkins, but you can show up when they're here at Shadyside, that they would say that they've got really sophisticated systems, as I'm sure you can imagine. They have this one CRM product that really tracks every single movement that these kids make. It's a little frightening, actually, but some of the schools use every single touch point. Some of the schools really don't use much of it, but they really are tracking all of those points of contact. So, and that's a great way. I mean, one of the programs that's going to be held here, it's 5 schools. See if I can remember them. It's Notre Dame, UVA, Emory, WashU, and Johns Hopkins. 5 schools, 1 night on this campus. That is a great way to knock out some of those schools. So how do you know about those? You have to be on the mailing list for those schools. So at the very least, one thing to check, and we've told the kids this would be another way that you might be able to help us. They've got to read the emails from the colleges. Set aside 1 hour each week to go through the emails from the colleges, open them up. That's the big brother thing again, like open the emails. Just like, we have an email system at Shady Sept, right? I know how many of you opened the last email we sent. And so if you call me and you're like, we never got this, I'm like, oh, but you did, and you opened it. I can see that, right? And they have that for the kids like times 100. So, but those sessions are really valuable, and being on those lists to know when they're coming is important. All right.
Just quickly, on top of that, I think it's important to note that if a school is here or a school is at a big fair and there are 100 people in front of you and you don't get to talk to the rep, they're not going to ding you for that. They're not going to say, oh my God, that student didn't fight through the crowd to come talk to me. Now we're not going to take them. This is all about like touch points, and a lot of times they'll have you just fill out a little card just to say that you were there.
Like if your kid's sick one day, you can't take it to the extremes. Like kids miss stuff. They're kids. Adults miss things. It's sort of like the spirit of doing everything that you can. I would say every fall, I think kids look at us and they're like, it's crazy in here. Like, this must be so stressful for you. How do you do this? And I will just say, we absolutely love doing this. We do this every fall, lots and lots of times. It is absolutely thrilling, and we really take seriously the privilege it is to be involved in your lives in this really intimate way. So that is not lost on us. We think about that every day. Getting to spend time with your kids. We laugh a lot every day, and we just love them. And I can promise you, I tell them this, when they get into college, they are the most excited. You guys are the second most excited. Maybe grandparents are third, but we are so close behind them, okay? We are in this with you. You should never feel like you're sitting on questions that you don't know how to answer, or that you are in this alone. We are going to be here every step of the way with you and your kids, because we love them and we love this. And in a few short months, they too will be wearing their sweatshirt proudly with where they're heading. So thanks.
Tenemos